please hit that subscribe button. Hey everybody, better suited to win the Stanley Cup this season. If you are new to the channel, Washington Capitals, the Boston Bruins.
Locked on and he scored! And we're live. Hey everybody, we're back again for another off-season recap video. And ignore the Bruins blanket in the background, because today we're talking about the Montreal Canadiens. Before we get into it, I just ask you to please hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet, and hit that like button as well. Both of those things help out so much and are much appreciated. But let's get talking about Montreal. They've, I think, had one of the more interesting off seasons of any team, and I like a lot of the moves that the Canadiens have made. I certainly think they're going to be a improved team heading into this coming year from where they were last year, and it's going to be really, really interesting to see where they finish in the as far as the playoff picture goes, because I think they have a chance to be a surprisingly good team this coming season with a lot of the moves that they made. So let's get into it, talking about said moves. So some big-time additions to the Montreal Canadiens lineup, starting with Tyler Toffoli, who they picked up in free agency. I love this move. I love this move so much. Toffoli was a guy that, you know, they were supposedly in on at the trade deadline last year. He ended up going to Vancouver, but now they get him in free agency, and they don't have to give up anything for him other than the cap space it took to sign him. So Toffoli goes to Montreal, and Toffoli is exactly the kind of player that the Montreal Canadiens needed to kind of add to their scoring, because they're a lower scoring team in the league. They're more of a defense first, you know, relying Carey Price and goal kind of team. Goal scoring certainly isn't their strong suit. They needed a more of a pure goal scorer in the lineup, and Tyler Toffoli is exactly that. He's going to consistently bring you 20-plus goals year in and year out. I think he has the potential to reach 30 goals, especially if he plays with a guy like Nick Suzuki or maybe even Kotkaniemi, if Kotkaniemi continues to develop and play like he did in the playoffs last year. I think, you put him in a position where he could potentially reach his upwards potential, which is around 30 goals. But he's so consistent. He's so consistent, and he gives you at least 20 every single year. So I love the addition of Toffoli to that lineup. I really, really think it helps that team and makes them a lot stronger up front. They also brought in Josh Anderson via a big trade with the Columbus Blue Jackets, and this is a move. This was a home run swing by Marc Bergevin. This move is either going to go really, really well or really, really bad. He either hit a grand slam with this trade or he struck out. And it remains to be seen, obviously, which way this goes. But Josh Anderson is a guy who has such great potential, and I think could become one of the top power forwards in the NHL. But on the other hand, he has not been able to stay healthy to this point in his NHL career, and he's really struggled with injuries and missed a lot of games. Not only did they trade for him and give up Max Domi to get Josh Anderson, but they also signed him to a massive 7-year contract. And that is really the head scratcher to me. Committing to this guy long-term like that when he hasn't been able to stay healthy is really an interesting and risky move from Marc Bergevin. This is, like I said, this is either going to go really well or really poorly. But Anderson is a guy who's big, physical, not afraid to drop the gloves if he needs to, and also has tremendous scoring ability. And I think if he's healthy for a full season, can score 25 to 30 goals. So, there's a lot of upwards potential here for this to be a great move if he can stay on the ice. When I look at Josh Anderson, I think he has the potential to be a player like Wayne Simmons was in his prime. If you go back and think about prime Wayne Simmons with the Philadelphia Flyers, that's the level that I think Josh Anderson can get to. But he has to stay healthy, and he has to stay on the ice to be able to do that. And so far in his career, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. So that's going to be really interesting to watch how Anderson looks in a Canadiens uniform and if he's able to stay healthy and reach his full potential. They also brought in Joel Edmondson via trade with the Carolina Hurricanes and then signed him to a 4-year deal. I like this move a lot for Montreal. Joel Edmondson is an upgrade on the back end from what they had, certainly over their bottom three guys. Like Victor Mete or Brett Kulak and guys like that. He's an upgrade over those guys. So I think he's going to play with Jeff Petrie on the second pair, and I think that could be a really good second pairing behind Weber and Sherratt, who is the clear number one there. Edmondson, I think, is very similar to Ben Sherratt in a lot of ways. And I think a little bit better. I think Edmondson has more upside potential than Ben Sherratt does, although Sherratt's certainly a solid D-man, especially when you put him with a guy like Shea Weber, who is, still one of the best, two-way defensemen in the league, even, at his age. Weber continues to be an absolute workhorse on the back end, but Joel Edmondson, I think he'll play with Jeff Petrie, and that will allow Petrie to bring out the offensive game and Edmondson to focus on the defensive game, and I think that could be a really solid pairing. And then lastly, they brought in Jake Allen, and this I think was a very underrated move for the Canadiens, bringing in Jake Allen to back up Carey Price. Carey Price has not had a real solid backup in a long time, and it's something that the Canadiens desperately needed because Carey Price was being overworked. He was getting tired by the end of the season, and he was getting injured, and it was because he was playing too many games, and they did not have an adequate backup to take some of that load off of Carey Price, especially now at Price's age where he's over 30 years old. They needed a guy like Jake Allen. Allen can come in, can play, a decent number of games every season and be, actually win games and be an adequate and a good, not just adequate, but a good backup for Carey Price. I think that is an underrated move that is going to take a huge weight off of Carey Price's shoulders and really allow him to be healthier and to be more rested heading into the playoffs, which is exactly what the Canadiens needed. As far as subtractions go, there weren't a whole lot. Obviously, Max Domi was traded away in the Josh Anderson deal. He was really the only big subtraction out of this lineup. Other than that, it was all depth guys. Dale Weiss, veteran fourth liner, became a free agent, not re-signed. Carl Alsner was bought out. His tenure with Montreal was an absolute disaster. And Keith Kincaid, who is basically a depth organizational goalie, also left in free agency. But it was a lot of depth guys leaving and AHL guys leaving. Max Domi was really the only significant subtraction, and they've obviously added a lot to this team with Toffoli, Anderson, Edmondson, and Allen all coming in. So Montreal has had a good offseason, in my opinion, a really good offseason. And they're a team that I think is added to that lineup greatly and is at least on paper, significantly better heading into this season than what they finished as last season. Plus, you have Nick Suzuki, another year older and another year more developed. You have got Jesperi Kotkaniemi, another year of development, and he looked really good in the playoffs after having a really bad regular season last year. He looked like a whole new player in the postseason. So I'm actually really excited to watch the Canadiens next year. I think they're going to be a really interesting team, a really fun team to watch, and they have a chance. I think if these guys gel well and the chemistry is there and these new players really play to their potential, they have a chance to be a much, much better team than they were last year and maybe surprise some people with how good they are and how high they could potentially finish in the standings. But brought in King Angus, a friend of mine and a fellow YouTuber Canadiens fan, to talk about this team and give his opinion on their moves this offseason. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to King Angus now and let you guys hear his opinion on all of this.
First off, I'd like to thank John from Off the Wall Hockey for allowing me to hop on the channel and give my opinions on the Montreal Canadiens, my favorite team, and the moves that they made in the offseason. So without further ado, let's get right into it with the first move that they made, acquiring a reliable backup, Jake Allen, in a trade with St. Louis. Now, it was really a robbery getting Jake Allen for that much, and Jake Allen is a proven goaltender, a guy who can go out and win games, and behind Carey Price, give him games off so that Price can stay healthy down the run to hopefully eventually make the playoffs. Really like this move. It was easily one of my favorites in the offseason by the Habs. Number 2, they acquired the negotiation rights for Joel Edmondson and then signed him to a very interesting contract. Now, the left defense situation, I think it was fine with Brett Kulak, Victor Mete, and Ben Sherratt. They all played fairly well in the postseason and the regular season. Kulak was a complete beast in the postseason, shutting down Sidney Crosby in the first round against the Penguins, and him and Jeff Petrie were easily the Habs' best pair all year. You could make an argument for Sherratt and Weber, but I don't think that they brought the same physicality and offense and defense. Kulak and Petrie were both 200-foot defensemen, two-way defensemen all year. I think they were the best pair that the Habs had. So acquiring Edmondson didn't really make that much sense to me, but hopefully it works out for the Habs. Joel Edmondson isn't a terrible player, so I hope he fits. Next up, the trade that I really hated when it happened. They traded Max Domi for Josh Anderson, and the Habs gave up a pick. Domi's the better player, and Columbus got a pick. I don't think this is one of Bergevin's better trades, and definitely not one recently. It's not even in his top 10. And Mark Bergevin, I trust him in this moment that Josh Anderson is going to do really well, and Mark Bergevin's going to prove why he wanted him, and I'm hoping that's the case. But seeing Max Domi go and him going to be on a total different team this year, that's definitely going to sting, and honestly, I hope he does well in Columbus, and Josh Anderson could be a solid second line fit for the Canadiens, and some veteran help for Nick Suzuki. Next up, Tyler Toffoli. Welcome to Montreal, Tyler. That was out of nowhere. Tyler Toffoli got signed by the Habs, and I really love this contract. It works for both sides, and Tyler Toffoli is a good player and a guy that the Habs, he fills a spot that the Habs have needed to fill for years. And honestly, I think Tyler Toffoli is the right guy to do it. We heard rumors that Mark Bergevin wanted to go acquire him from LA last year at the trade deadline when his name was up on the block, but he couldn't get a deal done before Vancouver. So he got it done in the offseason with the pending free agent, and Tyler Toffoli is going to be a great fit, probably on the same line as Josh Anderson. I think he moves over to left wing, and you get Nick Suzuki in the middle, Toffoli and Anderson on his wings. That would be a powerful line for Montreal. And finally, Brendan Gallagher re-signing the contract. And Gallagher, that contract means a lot. Gallagher is the heart and soul of this team, and I think by now everybody knows that. We saw how they performed in Game 6 against the Philadelphia Flyers when Gallagher was out, and it was not nearly as good as they did in Game 5 and the games before that with Gallagher to rally around. And Brendan Gallagher, he's always been a trust the process guy. I think for years he's been a guy who I thought deserved better, but he's stuck with the team and the leadership. He's the best leader on the team. I still think he should have got captain over Shea Weber, but Weber is pretty good. I love this deal for Brendan Gallagher, even though it's going to be hard to see when he's up around 33 and still making this much money. That's where it's pushing it for me, but I still do love Brendan Gallagher, and I'm thankful to see him in a Habs jersey for 6 more seasons. Thank you, John, for having me on the channel. Really enjoyed stopping by and talking about my Canadiens, and I'm really looking forward to the next season. I think that the grade for the offseason for the Habs would be an A-. Getting rid of Max Domi is a little bit of what would give it a minus instead of an even A, but I still think Mark Bergevin made some great moves. Go check my channel out. I'm pretty sure the link will be in the description, and subscribe here to Off the Wall Hockey. Thank you, John, for having me. Goodbye.
Thank you so much to King Angus for coming on the channel. Really, really appreciate it. It was great to have him on and get his opinion on the Canadiens. Link to his channel will be linked in the description as always, guys, so please check him out and give him some support. It would mean a lot, but there's really not much left to say. I think, between what I said at the beginning and what he said, we've pretty much covered it. I personally really like the Canadiens offseason. I think they have a chance to make a big push next year. I think they've gotten significantly better. They didn't really lose much out of the lineup other than Max Domi, obviously, but they've brought so much in. I think they've made their D-core better with Joel Edmondson. They finally got Carey Price a really good backup, so to take some of that pressure off. And they've added scoring with Tyler Toffoli and Josh Anderson. Obviously, the big question mark is Josh Anderson. Can he stay healthy? Can he live up to this contract? If he does, that is going to be extremely good news for the Canadiens. If he doesn't, that contract could become a big problem for the Canadiens. But overall, they've had a really good offseason. I think they're going to really push not only for a playoff spot, but possibly to make a run in the playoffs next season, especially if Carey Price plays at the level that he can. But that's my opinion on the Canadiens. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon, merchandise store, and donation link are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.